Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the Twofold podcast. So today we are going to be talking about triggers. So any type of trigger, whether it's in relationships, work, friendships, whatever it is, we're going to really dive into this topic of triggers.
I think we also want to talk about how you relate to your triggers and the way that the narrative that you tell yourself in your head about what it means, and then how it actually shows up in your day to day and how you can move through it and actually use it as an opportunity rather than seeing it as something to be scared of or run away from or let it even rule your life.
Yeah. So I'm just going to kick it off by sharing a very vulnerable and very real story because I got very triggered last night and I woke up feeling still in a state of triggers. And it was so funny because we were planning this episode and it was almost like the timing couldn't have been more perfect. So I can really just like speak from the heart and share. So I mentioned on our intro podcast, but for those of you who didn't listen to that one, I was in a very toxic relationship for many years. And without getting too much into that relationship right now, my partner would, for lack of a better word, just ghost me whenever he didn't feel like responding or texting me back. He would constantly say that he would do something, not do it. Like his words and his actions truly didn't align. But we had a big problem with our communication, and he was just very up and down and unresponsive. And I mean, I think Annabelle can even speak to how much I struggled in that relationship. And I am now in a very, very healthy and happy relationship with a partner who communicates very well. But, you know, I'm still a human being and I'm still working through some of the imprints that, you know, that past relationship left on me. And so last night, for example, I got super triggered by something that my partner did regarding texting me goodnight, something so little and so silly. But the emotions that I felt in my body were enormous and completely took over. So we just want to kind of like dissect this situation as a way to talk about triggers and how to shift your perspective. Yeah, really quickly before I do that, just for anybody who doesn't even know what a trigger is, just want to like quickly define it. So a trigger is a very strong emotional response in your body that you feel that is linked to a past wound or a past trauma. And what you feel in the present day is often very disproportionate to what's currently happening. So, example, last night, it was not a big deal what happened, but my body was remembering a wound from the past that hurt me deeply. And so I was feeling as if, you know, what my ex-boyfriend used to do to me, not do to me, but used to do. I was feeling it as if it was happening in the present, even though I have a partner who is incredibly attentive and communicative and loving. So oftentimes your response is very disproportionate to what's actually happening. So that's a very good sign that you're being triggered by something. And what's really funny too is that, I mean, it's a fine balance, but what used to happen in my last relationship, it upset me and hurt me so much. Yes, it actually was a big deal because it was a pattern. It was something that happened over and over again for many years. It was much worse than the situation that I described last night. So it was kind of a combination of that person being toxic and it being a very toxic dynamic, but also something that came from childhood, which is even why what happened in my past relationship affected me so much. So sometimes those triggers can even come from things in your childhood that like you're maybe not even aware of. So just want to mention that as well. But I think the biggest thing for me in my process in dealing with triggers is something I've learned in Kabbalah. We can go down a whole other path with what Kabbalah is. We'll do another episode on it, but it's an ancient wisdom that Annabelle and I both love and we study a lot, and it's made a huge impact on our lives. But it's this notion of pause, what a pleasure. And I think so often where we go wrong with triggers is that we look to blame the person or the thing and we make it about them. We make it about what someone else is doing to us instead of taking radical responsibility for the fact that the trigger is yours. it doesn't mean that the other person or the other situation is like completely innocent or that they're not doing anything quote unquote wrong. But the trigger and the feeling, that is yours to deal with. That is your responsibility. So I think the first step is taking radical responsibility for that and really slowing down and shifting your perspective to say, like, this is something bad that's happening to me, how awful, blah, 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 and saying, wait a minute, this is just a messenger. This is a sign that there's something deep within me that I need to heal. And what a beautiful opportunity that is, because if it didn't come up, you wouldn't be able to heal it. And that wouldn't, you wouldn't be evolving and getting to the next level of your personal development and your growth.
Yeah, I think having an example for how it actually shows up rather than just talking about it as an abstract thing is really helpful. And that's kind of the first thing, to step back and recognize that in this situation, the thing that you're being triggered by it's not actually the text message or whatever the situation is. It's bringing up a feeling that you associate with a really difficult time in your life, whether you're aware of it or not. But that's actually what's happening in your body. And so you're reacting to something that, if you are able to get a bit of perspective and if you have self-awareness, you can step back and be like, this objectively is not a very big deal. But the way that it shows up in your body, it feels like a very big deal. And I think that it depends on where you're at in your kind of healing journey, if you have the self-awareness, and that's really the first step, is to recognize and just kind of call it out and be like, wow, I feel triggered right now. Yeah. But I don't think that the answer is to run away from your triggers. I don't think it's to try to avoid them. I actually have found now I'm at a place that when I feel triggered, I can kind of get myself a little bit excited and be like, wow, I really don't like the way this feels in my body, but this is actually an opportunity to get underneath something that's been kind of getting in my way and making me stumble and heal it, actually. Yeah. So let's talk about, for you, what that brought up, how you kind of related to it, the story, like what was your process for dealing with it and not trying to fix it, because that's, I think, telling your body that something is actually wrong, and rather sitting with it and, just walk me through your process.
Yeah. So I think we can talk all day about the perspective shift, but then when you're actually in the moment of feeling triggered, it's like those things, you completely forget all those things, right? It's very easy to remember them in hindsight when you've calmed down. But let's talk about strategies for what to do in the actual moment. And I think one thing that I've learned is that a trigger is, you feel it in your body first and foremost. I mean, you guys probably know that feeling. Your heart starts to beat faster. You feel a little hot. You feel flushed. You feel all of this energy in your body, and that's because trauma and emotional wounds are stored in your body. Your body remembers it. So even though what happened to me last night with my boyfriend was not a big deal at all, my body started to feel the sensations that I used to feel. So when it's somatic, which means that it's in your body, logic doesn't work in that moment. And so I think the most important thing you can do when you're in that really heightened emotional state is to focus on your body. So that's, things like deep breathing, box breathing, where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for longer, 4 or 5 seconds, even more than that. Putting your hand on your heart, another hand on your belly, and deep belly breathing. So really tapping into your body and the emotions that you're feeling, that's the first step, because that's how you calm yourself down enough, that's how you regulate yourself enough to then be able to tap into the mind and apply the logical things. So what are some other things that you do in that moment to really calm your body down when you're feeling triggered?
I also just want to pause and say that it can be when you first, everybody talks about your thoughts create your reality, all these things, the world is a mirror to you. But when you really sit with and understand the fact that your entire life is entirely your responsibility, I think that a lot of people kind of shy away from that or run away from that or say, but, there's kind of, they want to justify something. And the way that you come to that truth in your own is your own process. But once you really, really sit with that and it doesn't necessarily scare you, it becomes something very empowering. And it actually allows you then to go through every situation and every trigger and say, okay, I actually have an opportunity here to heal something within me and feel more grounded in myself. And then you're not you're not at the whim of your emotions. You're not, you know, it's not about what other people do, because you're very clear in yourself. And that is actually an empowered place to be. And from there, you can really create anything that you want. But the first step is just having the awareness and accepting that responsibility as well. And also not having any, I think I have struggled with this in the past. I tend to judge my own process, and I like to fix things quickly. And it can be a fine balance between having compassion for yourself when something comes up, and then also, you know, being a bit too rigid in how you deal with your triggers. Like, it's okay if you feel bad about something or something triggers you and you don't react in the way that you necessarily want to. But there is so much power in that pause and just creating a little bit of space between your instinctual gut reaction and kind of connecting to a higher version of yourself, or just even holding the space to realize, wow, I do want to react in this situation, but I'm not going to.
Absolutely. I love that, setting a 5-minute timer on your phone and saying, okay, for 5 minutes, I'm going to focus on breathing. And after 5 minutes, if I want to let my mind go, it can. You know, it gives yourself a very manageable container. But I think if you can calm your body down a little bit, that's when you can start to ask yourself questions. Get very curious. Ask yourself, like, where is this coming? Really identify the feeling that it's bringing up. So for me, it was the feeling of being abandoned. That's what it was. And that comes, you know, from things that were even before my toxic relationship. That's a feeling. Those types of feelings usually come in childhood. And that's not to say, like, you know, nothing big or traumatic had to happen in childhood in order for you to feel that way. I think on another episode we'll get into like big T versus little t, but there are kids, when we're young and our brains are still developing, we process things in absolutes. So it could be something as little as your mom was late to pick you up from school once, and your brain processed this as, I'm being abandoned. And that can then show up later in life. So I think when you can really name the feeling specifically, what is it that you're feeling? Okay, last night I was feeling abandoned. And then you can start to get curious about it, and you can ask yourself questions. And it's like, examples, well, am I really being abandoned? What are all the things that my partner does to prove otherwise, or to tell me otherwise, that he's never abandoned me and never would abandon? And you really start to ask yourself questions. And this is kind of gets into like the cognitive behavioral therapy, where you reframe the thought. So the thought is, okay, my boyfriend didn't text me. That must mean that he doesn't love me. I'm not a priority, and I'm going to be abandoned. And you literally choose to rewire it. So you can do this, you know, written, you can just do it in your mind, you can do it talking to yourself. I like to just talk to myself, but you say, okay, he didn't text me. What are all the other things that could mean? He's busy, he got distracted, like he just forgot, he's a human being, you know, and really start to talk to yourself and challenge those beliefs that are coming up, challenge those thoughts. Because I think where we go wrong is we assume that a thought that we have equals the truth, equals reality. But thoughts, you know, it can be a wrong thought. So you really have to challenge those thoughts.
I think it also goes hand in hand with being very present in the moment, because I can watch my mind, even when I'm trying to be in my body, I can watch my mind still trying to run away with me, being like, this isn't gonna work. You know, my mind's still racing. And I think even just setting a 5-minute timer on your phone and being, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I'm literally just gonna breathe. I'm gonna, you know, take deep breaths and not focus, and in 5 minutes I can let my mind run. You know, it's that sort of thing of just slowing everything down and not allowing the power of momentum to take you, because it's too easy. I often have it with triggers that, you know, I'll get triggered by something and then I'll try to kind of run away from it, and I'll start, whether it be scrolling on my phone or I'll get busy work, and my mind just starts running faster and faster and faster. And it just blows the whole thing even more out of proportion. So anything that you can do to not only get into your body, but also to really just slow down for a minute and create some space is, I find, very helpful. And also just to let it move through you and not judge the fact that you're being triggered. I think too that you have to be open to the idea that the things that you think aren't necessarily true. And you have to be open to the idea that, wait, maybe this is just a story that I'm telling myself, and I've told it to myself so many times that I have essentially made it my identity, or I've made it, so this gets a little bit into, you have to be very careful about not only the words that you speak, but the thoughts that you have, because the stories that you keep telling yourself over and over, I think it's something that we have 50 to 70,000 thoughts a day, of which many are repeated thoughts. And when you really break that down, you realize that the thoughts that you have are creating your reality. So if you can get enough distance between, okay, this is how I feel in this moment, and this is the story that I'm telling myself about what this means in my own head, how could I actually rewrite this and choose to believe something different? Because there's always a choice, and it's in making a choice that you feel more grounded in yourself, more empowered, through the narrative that you're telling yourself, that you can really start to change the way that you relate to your triggers. And I think another thing that came up for me and often helps me in those moments is to recognize that it's too easy when you're in your own healing journey and you're so aware of all your own things, to, when somebody else does something, to be in the mindset of, well, they don't understand, they're doing this to me, and you're making what they do mean something based on your own experience. And sometimes I think I've been in the situation where I often forget that that person is also going through their own process, and they're experiencing everything through their lens and their triggers and their, perspective. And it's just really to not make it about you, especially when it's in relation to another person,
100%
has been very helpful for me.
Yeah. What are some other things that you've found trigger you? And then another thing I want to talk about, something that were having a conversation about the other day, which is that
we've been talking about that, yeah.
Relationships, and it doesn't have to be romantic, although I do think romantic relationships tend to trigger us a lot, but it could be relationships with your family, with your friends, in work, but other people trigger you. That's just the reality. Other people are going to trigger you, and you're going to trigger other people, and you may never know that. And just curious to hear what you've experienced in that regard. I know we were talking a little bit about romantic relationships and the triggers that they bring up.
Yeah, I think that my biggest trigger has to do with feeling judged, and kind of underneath all of that is a feeling of, I'm too much, I'm too emotional, I'm too sensitive, I'm too this, I overthink things too much, and that if I am fully, authentically myself, that I won't be loved or accepted. So it's interesting that the way that I've learned to relate to my triggers is to shut down and to kind of put up protective walls, and that's the way. Some people lash out. I definitely shut down, probably a bit too early. We were talking about it the other day, how you can be on your healing process and feel so good, but the second you introduce another person into the situation, it brings up a lot of things. And you said something to me that is just so true, that there's some shadows in yourself that you can't get to without having another person in front of you, because it brings up a lot of feelings and triggers. But this brings us back to our main point of triggers being kind of a portal to heal, rather than seeing it as something that you have to resist or run away from. And I think that I was in a long relationship, about 6 years. It was a very serious relationship, and I underestimated how much it impacted me after we had broken up. And I had a few other things going on, and I kind of just brushed it aside. And when I started dating again, I tried to keep people at bay. That was my way of kind of avoiding triggers. And more recently, I have been really trying to lean into it. And instead of, my immediate narrative in my head is when something would come up, to be like, oh, that can't be my person then, or I don't like the way that this makes me feel. And now I'm really trying to lean into it and say, okay, why do I feel this way? And actually, it's not even about the other person, but use it as a way to understand more about myself and really heal those parts of me, so that they don't keep repeating as a pattern in the next relationship. Because I do think that until you've healed something within yourself, it's just going to keep coming back, whether it be a different person, it's the same thing. It's the same pattern. So I don't think the answer is to run away from it and just try to find another person. It's actually to really get underneath why it is something is bothering you, and then that won't come up in the next relationship.
Yeah, and that brings up such like this question that people kind of like debate in relationships, which is, do you have to be fully healed should you be fully healed in order to get into a relationship, or can you be in a relationship and be simultaneously healing? And I think about this all the time, like all of the times that I've not been in a relationship, I think that I, have all my ducks in a row and I'm super healed. And then, like you said, the second you bring someone else in, whether it's the early stages of dating, whether it's, a serious committed relationship, you are going to be triggered like you just are. Especially, romantic relationships trigger you, I think, so much more deeply because you're so intimate with that person, you spend a lot of time with them. It's different than just a friendship where you probably don't see your friend as frequently. They're probably, it's not the same level of closeness. And so it's just so funny because I really thought that I had healed through a lot of my triggers from my past relationship before I got into this new relationship. Well, it's not really new anymore, but before I got into my current relationship. And I found myself just so shocked that, wow, there's just more and more stuff. And I think personally that relationships are so healing and that they do trigger you more and they give you an opportunity to then get curious about those triggers and heal them. So I just wanted to mention that.
I think what I've come to really realize, though, is that you'll never be fully healed,
Yeah.
and that's the whole point. And the thing that's given me the most, because I've struggled with that too. Like I feel like I have to be fully healed, and it gets again at that core wound, or I won't be accepted. But what I've come to realize is it's really not either or. It's, can you be perfect as you are and also be healing at the same time?
Yes.
Because you're never going to be fully healed. And it's so funny that you say that, because I was actually listening to a podcast this morning and he said, new level, new devil.
Yeah.
And it's so true that the more that you heal and the more that you kind of raise your frequency, your vibration, there's always going to be new tests. There's always going to be things that you struggle with. And it's actually a beautiful thing, because the way that you relate to those struggles, the way that you relate to those triggers, your ability to navigate them is often a lot easier from all the healing work that you've done. But it's never going to be that nothing triggers you. And I also don't think that you want to get to a place that nothing triggers you, because it's through that process of healing that you grow and you learn. And I think that's why it's so important to just reframe the way that you see triggers in your own mind and not see it as this thing that's bad or that you should run away from. Or our purpose in this life is to expand and to grow, and just this idea that, trigger warning, it's a bad thing. Like, you're not meant to be fragile and not be triggered in life. I think it's more so that you're meant to be resilient and learn how to deal with your triggers and grow from them.
Yeah, and I also just think that, because I've struggled sometimes with, well, if I don't handle or react to my trigger perfectly, then I failed, or then I went backwards or something. And I think that we need to have more grace and compassion for ourselves, that you don't have to handle the situation perfectly. You don't have to be unaffected. But if you can pause just 1 second longer, or if you can choose to respond just fractionally differently than you did the last time, that's growth. And that will then create a ton of momentum for the next time that you're triggered. So don't try to be perfect or, do the right thing 100% of the time. Like, you just have to be a little bit better than the last time. And that is healing in and of itself.
I think even too, when you really fall off track, my instinct is to judge myself. And I've come to realize that maybe I had to fall off track again to learn how to relate to falling off track in a more graceful way and have compassion for myself. So it's not like a double whammy, and that's actually healing, and that's actually growth. And just like recognizing the little places that you grow and the little places that you have more compassion for yourself, I think is very powerful. And it gives you more, for me at least, it's given me more of a sense of self-trust, because I know that in those moments, even if I do a major F up, I can still have my own back, and I'm not gonna jump down my own throat and criticize myself and judge myself and just feel all of this shame inside that is really not the vibration that I want to be at in any way.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think triggers are an invitation for us as individuals to learn how to create emotional safety within ourselves. And we need to fully remove the attention on the person who triggered you, the thing that triggered you. It's not about them. It's not about controlling them. It's about learning how, no matter what is going on in the external world and in your 3D world, it's about learning how to create emotional safety within your body. And that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing, and both of us are really working on that right now. And it's not easy, but it's a journey, but it's a really, really rewarding one.
Honestly, we were talking about this yesterday because, as we've told you, we're very close. We talk about everything, we share everything. And we were talking about the intention behind your sharing. And I have recognized in myself in moments that I have been really triggered, that my instinct is to run to family, is to run to my sister, to my mom, and say, and what do I do? What do I do? And I've recognized now, the more that I've kind of healed and expanded my capacity to deal with uncomfortable emotions, that, wow, actually the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm looking for somebody else to regulate my emotions for me. I'm looking for somebody else to give me validation, to give me comfort, to give me support. But in doing that, I'm not actually creating that safety in myself. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't share with friends or family and lean on people, because that's such a beautiful thing as well. My gosh, in some of my darkest times, I don't know what I would have done without my family, and I'm so grateful that I had people in my life that I could turn to, and I think that's a really beautiful thing. But I also think now the place that I'm at, I always want to share because I'm doing it from a place of love and connection, and not trying to put something on to somebody else.
Right. Nobody else.
I'm not sure. We were talking about that yesterday. I'm not sure if you want to add on that.
Yeah, nobody can heal you, and I think when we feel uncomfortable feelings in our body, it's human nature to say, I don't want to feel this, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I go to somebody else with the expectation that they are going to make me feel better, they are going to fix it, they are going to regulate me, and nobody can do that for you. It's just a fact of life. People can support you and they can love you, but your emotions are your emotions, and they're your responsibility to work through and to manage and to heal. And I think once you kind of realize that and accept that, because it took me a long time to get there, but there's a certain level of peace that comes with that realization, and comes with that acceptance that I'm the only one who can heal myself, and it's an empowering feeling. Not to say it makes those feelings any less uncomfortable, any less strong and powerful in your body, but it's an empowering feeling when that can really shift in your mind.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I also think it's important to recognize that it's not about being perfect, and we have probably both struggled with that a little bit. You can get there's a certain personality type, and you can get on to something and you want it to be so perfect then. And then in the moments that it's not, it's too rigid. And I've even found that sometimes the most healing spiritual thing I can do is sit back, order takeout, and watch a movie. And I watch myself have this narrative of, oh, but then I'm failing, then I'm not growing, then I'm not this. And it's actually, the test is in reframing the narrative of that. Like, life is meant to be lived, it's meant to be enjoyed. Your healing journey isn't meant to become your identity. It's meant to be something that actually allows you to be fully present in your life and to experience things and to have choice rather than being ruled by your emotions and reacting left and right. And that's the peace that you're talking about, gives you the space then to choose what you want to do in that moment. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah. All right, I think that's a great place to wrap up. Just really quickly before we do, I just want to kind of summarize the main takeaways from this episode. I wrote them down just to be sure that I didn't miss anything, because I really want to leave you guys with tangible things. So number one, your triggers are invitations, right? They are not threats. They are an opportunity to look deeper within yourself at something that's asking for attention and love, something that needs to be healed. So again, reframe what triggers are. They are not bad things. They are opportunities for growth. The second thing, the way that you respond to a trigger can either reinforce that old pattern, right? Or it can open the door for a new version of you, the higher version of your soul. So that's super powerful. Creating a pause between your reaction and your response is the most powerful self-regulation tool that you have. And that's kind of what we were talking about, and just saying, like, how can you tap into your body and slow everything down and not give your mind that momentum to spiral? Again, you don't need to share everything that you're feeling. Really lean into that self-trust and get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable on your own sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And then lastly, emotional safety is not about controlling other people. It's about creating that safety within your own body. So those are kind of the takeaways that we want to leave you with. Anything else on your end, Annabelle?
Yeah, I just want to say also, this is not about telling you what to do or how to relate to your own mind, but rather just giving you a little bit of insight into how we've dealt with our own triggers, and hopefully an invitation to get curious about why you feel the way that you feel and react the way that you react in certain situations.
Yeah.
And hopefully, yeah.
It's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process. So we'd also love to hear anything from you guys, like any, self-regulation tools, any perspective shifts, anything at all. We also want to learn from our audience as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you for showing up today, and we will see you in the next one.